Hello, everyone. It's nice to have you join us today on today's episode. So, today I'll be taking you on the introduction to HTML. It's nice to have you join us today. And I'm Daniel Michael, your host for today. In today's episode, Introduction to HTML. So, HTML has several versions since its inception in 1994, January 1st. It has a version of version 1.0, version 2.0, version 3.0, 4.0 in 1998, 4.01 in 1999, version 5 in 2014, and 5.1 in 2016. That has been the latest version 5.1, since the inception of HTML. HTML has been widely used throughout the web in most web applications or websites you see today. HTML is a backbone of, it's one of, not the backbone actually, it's one of the structure, one of the skeletal parts of every website. So, what's HTML? We'll be hearing about HTML, HTML. What's HTML? Let me clear your doubt or your question. HTML is a hypertext markup language. It uses a markup system composed of elements which represent specific content. Markup means that with HTML, you can declare what is being presented to a viewer, not how it is being presented. Let me explain that. HTML simply means you declare, that means you write everything that is being presented to anybody viewing your website, not how it is presented by your browser, because every website must be run via a browser. So it's not how your browser presents it to the user or whatever. It is how you want it to be presented. So you use HTML to present it to your users. Visual representations are defined by cascading style sheets. That is, visual representations like the styling of the site, the design, everything that's to do about design is being done with cascading style sheet. That is, visual representation are defined by cascading style sheets and realized by browsers. Yes, they are being noticed by the browsers and then present it how you have written it, how you want it to be presented. That is how the browser will then present it. So HTML is sometimes called a programming language. Yes. Some time ago, when I initially started, I had that kind of a debate with some of my co-friends I later met somewhere in Delta State, Nigeria. So I had a conversation with them, and I was in the part where I was in the opinion of HTML is a programming language, and they said no, HTML is not a programming language. So we debated, and I lost. So I had to go back and check what HTML actually is. Although I already know HTML, but I was thinking it's a programming language because it's also grouped under web developments, and anything concerning web development is all about programming. That was why I was actually beating my chest and saying HTML is a programming language. But my doubts were not cleared, and I found out that HTML is not a programming language, which is simply because it has no logic. Yes, there are dynamic things that website does that are being done on website, like logging in, fetching data, showing dynamic contents like um, let me use for instance an e-wallet. If you check your e-wallet, your balances there are not static. They are always dynamic. They can change. Sometimes you can see 7,000, sometimes you can see 8,000, and so on. So those dynamic changes you see are being handled by logics. So HTML doesn't have the ability to handle that kind of changes. Whatever you write in HTML remains the same throughout the entire web application. So HTML is not a programming language simply because it does not provide logical functions. So moving on, markup language uses the HTML tags, provides semantic meaning and machine readability to the content in the page. An element usually consists of an opening tag and a closing tag, which contain the element's name surrounded by angle brackets, and the content is in between. The content you want to actually display are always in between the opening and the closing elements of the HTML. So I'll be showing you an example of that. Let me create a new file. Before I proceed, this editor I'm using is called VS Code, that is Visual Studio Code. So you can head over to Microsoft or just search on Google to be able to download this text editor. It's actually a very, very rich text editor with a lot of features that will enable you write your code effectively. So I'll be creating a new file. I'll be creating a new file on my site. You can either go through the file on this menu to create a new file, or you press Control Alternate Windows plus N. Simple. You can just click Control N and it will create a new file. So I'm clicking on Control N right now, and a new file has been created. As you can see, you can select the language you want to write currently. There are tons of languages it supports, including Python, a lot, Rust, SQL, Vue, CSS. This text editor is very compatible with most of the programming language. You can see C Sharp, C++. So moving on, we are writing HTML. You can also set it on auto detect, as you can see. So when you write your HTML code, it just detects that this is HTML and then saves the file. It pre-saves the file as HTML. It's not completely saved until you actually save it. So we are actually going to write HTML. This is it. And then I want to show you what the opening tag and the closing tag is. So we have in HTML an opening tag which is surrounded by the angle brackets. Let me zoom in my screen. I think you can't see. Let me zoom in. I think this is perfect right now. So elements are or tags are being made up of angle brackets and a description. For instance, I want to write a HTML tag, HTML. Like I said, it has an opening and a closing. So the text you see inside, in between the opening and the closing angle brackets, is called the element. It's a descriptive name that signifies a tag in HTML. So this you see here, this you see here is the opening, and the one you see down here is the closing. So most elements actually have opening and closing elements. I mean, opening and closing tags. What differentiates the opening and the closing? It's this forward slash you see right here. The forward slash you see before the descriptive name is what makes this particular tag the closing of its opening, which is HTML. That's the HTML tag. So we have other tags. There are some elements that do not have closing. These elements are called void elements. They include the image tag, the link tag or an input tag. We also have the break tag and the horizontal tag. They don't have closing tags. They look like this. The image is just like this, but you can also create a closing tag for it, just like this. We still have the H arrow. That's the horizontal element. It doesn't have a closing. We also have the B arrow. It doesn't have. We also have the link. It doesn't have. We also have one again called the meta. They don't have closing tag, but you can place its closing like this, which is very professional, I will say. So moving on, let's create our first web page. We'll be creating our first web page right now. So therefore, I will be deleting this. Now, before creating your web page, everything about your site has to be organized. Yes, in programming, everything must be organized. That is to say, you must have to save your file in a particular folder. The file must be contained in a particular folder. So right now, I have my first file. I will be saving it by creating a folder on my desktop. And then, okay, I'll be creating a folder on my desktop called web tutorial. Did I spell that correctly? Web tutorial. Okay. So the first file of every website, that's the entry point, is known as the index.html. It could be index.php, index.htm, index.ph, and so on. There are a lot of extensions. So as you can see on my save type right here, I can see select the programming language I'm writing currently, which is HTML, and then ensure that you save the file as index, which is the entry point into your website. If there are some cases where this save as type will be only having all files and one other stuff like that. I can't remember that for now. In that situation, you just have to write index.html as the full file name, HTML. So either you specify it here, index.html, or you only write the name index and then specify it down here if these options are available. So I'll be saving it inside the web folder, and that's it. I have successfully created my first file. Now I have to open this file in my workspace. The reason is because I'll be using an extension called Live Server to load these files to preview my my site, because it automatically renders a new change whenever I make one inside the code. So to do that, you click on File and click on Open Folder. So I'll be locating my folder on the desktop, which is Web, and then selecting it. Now you see my editor reloads. That's it. So in my creating our first web page, we just have to create something called a boilerplate. So to create this boilerplate, first thing we write is the exclamation mark. This is not necessary. Is the exclamation mark. So once you put the exclamation mark, there's a suggestion. Yes, this is the suggestion of a boilerplate. So the single exclamation mark creates a boilerplate for HTML documents. It's actually meant for only HTML documents. So for other programming languages, I don't think there's any boilerplate for it. So for HTML, this is a symbol to create its boilerplate. So once I click on enter, you see my boilerplate is being created. Although I think it's an extension that does this. In some of my video, in the future, I will actually show you the extensions I'm using with this VS Code that makes most things I do easily. Sometimes I can be writing, for instance, when I write div, the moment I close it, it automatically creates the closing element. So there's an autocomplete tag autocomplete extension that does that. So in a subsequent video, I will show you the extensions I use in my HTML. So let me explain everything you see here before we preview our site on our browser. So the file you see here, the doc type, this represents HTML5, which is the latest HTML, the latest version of HTML. It represents HTML5 since 2016. The doc type represents HTML5. In HTML4, it's one other, the text there is very long. I can't remember what is being used to represent HTML4, but this doc type actually tells the browser that the document you are about to preview is a HTML5 document. It's not actually necessary, it's not important here, but for professionalism, it is, because the browser uses it to interpret, it tells the browser what version of HTML it's trying to present. Although if it is missing here, it will be imputed by the browser by default. So the next thing we have is the HTML opening and closing, the HTML opening and closing tags. As you can see, we have the opening and this is the closing. Then in between the HTML, we then have the opening head and the closing head. We also have the opening body and the closing body tags. Now, these are the two elements that goes in between the HTML tags. These two elements, the body and the head, goes in between them. Now, a lot of things also go in between the opening and closing of the head tags, one of which is the meta tag. The meta tag actually stands for descriptions. It's a descriptive tag that describes what this entire page is. It tells the browser a lot about the content on this page. Now, the next thing we have here is the title. This is the title of the page. Like I said initially, whatever you are showing, whatever you are trying to present to your users, go in between the opening and the closing tags. Now, as you can see, we have the opening tag of the title and we have the closing tag of the title. Now, in between the opening and the closing, then we have the document text. This document is the title of the document. So we write it in between the opening and the closing. That is for title. Now, the next thing that goes in between the head elements, we now have the link. The link. If I'm too fast, you can actually come back and watch this video, but I'm trying to conserve time because I don't want to make this video too lengthy. So, like I said, the link tag do not have a closing, but you can actually specify it. Same goes for the meta. You can specify it. That's the link tag. The link tag goes inside the head and it has an attribute. I'll tell you what attributes are in the future. Its attributes, major attribute is href. It specifies a file, either an image or not an image, an icon file, or a cascading sheet style. That is the style sheet, either external or internal. What I mean by external is that either from an external source or within your site if it is present. So the next thing that follows here is the script. Is the script. The script tag is actually used to write JavaScript codes. In subsequent video, we'll learn about JavaScript, but in this one, we are not learning about JavaScript. I'm just telling you about the tag. So you can actually write JavaScript codes in between the opening and the closing of this one. For instance, I'm creating a function. So we'll create the function name, blah, blah, blah. In our JavaScript tutorial, I will tell you that, tell you everything about functions. So for now, not to bore you or load your head with a lot of codes. So let's actually ignore this. So we can also write our JavaScript codes in an external file and include it here by passing an attribute called source. We pass an attribute called source. So in here, we can specify our external JavaScript file or internal within our site. So that's it for the head tag. I think there are other tags that go in between the head, but I can't remember all of them for now. But I will leave a link to its documentation, that's the HTML documentation below. So do well to check the description under this video to get those links. And before I forget, if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, please do so and turn on the notification bell so as to receive updates of new and upcoming tutorials. Moving on, I want to tell you what goes in between the body. The elements that goes in between the body are everything that you want to show to the user. That is everything you want the user or anybody visiting your site to see goes in between the opening and the closing body elements. Now, the first thing I will want to show you is the heading because we should be learning heading right now. I should tell you about the headings. The headings, HTML provides only plain paragraph text tags, but 6 separate header tags to indicate headings of various sizes and thickness, enumerated as heading 1 through to heading 6. Heading 1 has the largest and thickest text, while heading 6 has the smallest and thinnest down to the paragraph level. This topic details proper usage of these tags. Now let me explain what headings is. So the heading is a H1. This is we have H1 to H6. That's the heading element or the heading tag. You can call it that. So right now I'll be duplicating it into 6 places. So we have heading 6 as the smallest, and then we have heading 5, followed by heading 4, and then heading 3, and then we have heading 2. So in between here, we'll now specify our text. That's the text I want you to see on my screen right now. So I'll write this is heading 1. Then right here, I will now say this is heading 2. This is heading 3. This is heading 4. This is heading 5, and this is heading 6. So these are the headings. Now let's actually preview our site so you understand what we mean by heading 1 is the biggest, that is the thickest, through to heading 6, which is the smallest and the thinnest. So right now I'll be running my site via the live server, which is an extension of VS Code that you can easily download from the extension. So you click on extension and then you search for live server. So I won't be able to show you that for today, or let me see, because I have it installed live server. Okay, I'm offline currently, so you won't be able to see that, but let me see. These are all the extensions I have. Okay, this is live server, so you can search for live server and then install it. I already have it installed, so I can't install it again. That's it for the live server. So once you have installed it, you'll be able to run your application by clicking open with live server, which is going to create a unified link instead of showing your full document path. And I will also show you something to open these documents. There are two methods. Currently, I'm going to use this live server, and the other method is by going to your file explorer, wherever your folder is. Currently, mine is on the desktop, on the web folder, web. So the file we just created, the index.html, is being stored right here. So I can either click here to open it on my browser, which will actually show my document path, my full system path to the document on the browser's search bar. But you can also do this by right clicking on the file you intend to open on your browser and running it with live server. That is open with live server. Once you click on this, the extension automatically boils up and then opens a unified link, a good looking link, like a website URL, as you can see. But that's my system local IP address with a port that is being assigned by the live server 5500 forward slash index.html. So that's how you run your application. Now, we are talking about the heading elements. Like I said, heading 1 is the biggest or the thickest, while heading 6 is the thinnest or the smallest. That's the heading. This is heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5. So the lower it goes or the higher it goes, it becomes thinner. And then the lower it goes, it becomes bigger. You might be asking why we don't have heading 7. Yes, we don't. We don't have heading 7. We only have from heading 1 to heading 6. Now, I want to show you one other thing that you might not notice. If you look up here where my cursor is, you see the document title. Now, you see that we don't have our HTML tags being presented on the browser because we actually instructed our browser to show you what we are currently seeing, not the tags. So the browsers do not show you the tags except there's an error, or where in a case where you use the code tag. There is something called the code tag. That's the HTML code tag. So once you use it, whatever HTML code that goes in between that code tag, even JavaScript code, will actually display on the browser. So this is it for the heading. And the last thing I'll be showing you on this tutorial today is the paragraph. But before I show you that, I want to tell you something about comments. I think this is the best time to tell you about comment because I'll be writing it in most place sections of this code so as to enable you remember whatever that part it describe whatever that particular element is for you. So elements are a means for us, we developers, or you, an upcoming developer, to know what a particular function or tag or um, script does. It is used to describe whatever a tag does or a function do in any particular site or software application. It is good for you as a developer for your future self because you might have a code that is very lengthy, and in the future whereby you come back to maybe modify that code, you might not be able to understand everything you've written there. So the comments will actually help you understand whatever you've written there. And it's also good in a situation where you are not in position to edit that file or that software again. So whoever will be in position then will be able to understand whatever you have written via your comments. So comments are very important. It's a very standard practice that I will advise you to inculcate while taking this part. So to write your comments in HTML, we first go with the first angle bracket and an exclamation mark with two hyphens. As you can see, it automatically completes it. So I have two hyphens on the other end and the closing angle bracket. So in between the angle brackets and the hyphens with the exclamation mark, that is where I write my comments. I can write a lot of things in there as long as they're in between these angle brackets, they are being commented. And the most interesting part is they don't appear on the web page. Whatever is in between the comments, whatever is being commented in any code, do not appear either on the software or in the web page. It doesn't. So it is only meant for you and whoever is seeing your code. So this is heading tags. Heading tags. So that's for future reference. So the next thing I want to show you now, which is be the last, is the paragraph. The paragraph is just a simple P tag with an opening and a closing. Yes, as you can see, I can then write this is my first paragraph. So this is my first paragraph. This is my first paragraph. If you should go back to our website right now, you immediately see it down here. This is my first paragraph. That's simply because that's the function of this live server. So whatever I write here, as soon as it is saved, it automatically refreshes the page and then displays our updates. And back to that comments, like I told you, the comments do not appear on the browser. There are only one way or two ways whereby you can see it. The one of which is by viewing the source code on the browser. So there's something here called the view page source. Once you click on it, you then entirely see the source code for this particular web page. Ignore the script you see here. You don't know how it came about, yes, but it came about via the live server. This is the script that is being used to automatically reload the page whenever I make any change. So these are the codes we've been writing from here up, as you can see. These are the codes we've been writing. And I told you that, okay, I didn't. Nothing goes outside this HTML or this body. Every other thing you write must be in between the body. Whatever you want to present to your users must be in between the body. Reason is because if I should move this paragraph outside here, the issue is not that it's not going to appear on the website. It's going to appear, but the only issue is it cannot be controlled. What I mean by it cannot be controlled, in a case where you want to style it, you cannot control it. Maybe moving it to the left, moving it to the right, you can't. So it must be inside the body. And as you can see here, this script was injected. I told you you can write your script in between the script tags. Now this script was injected by the live server, and as you can see, it is before the closing of the body, not outside the body, nor outside the HTML. So it is before this closing body. Every script goes before the closing body. You can either write it at the top or at the bottom. I didn't tell you that. You can either put the script tag here or you place it here. So whichever way, it's fine. Your question now might be, why will you place the script tag on the bottom and also place it at the head? Why? Now let me tell you something. Um, Websites actually, the browsers actually interpret the website from the top to bottom, like from this doc type down to the HTML. So while reading it from the top to bottom, there are some cases where you might want your script to load before the entire page, simply because there are some actions you want to carry out before the web page loads completely. Or placing it base here, you want your entire page to load before the script is being loaded, simply because until your page is being loaded into the DOM before you want your script to take effect and then start its function interaction with your site. When we start learning JavaScript, I will tell you what DOM simply means. But for now, we'll be ending here for today. And in today's video, I hope we've achieved something. Today's episode, I hope we've achieved something. See you next time and stay safe.